I mean, to be fair, It's Fan 3 was a bit of a fuck-uppery because, weirdly, that gave him more trouble than It's Fan 5. So It's Fan 3 was obviously a reference to him cleansing his own legions, his own loyalist elements of his legions, and all of the loyalist elements of his other traitor legions, such as the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and of course the Emperor's Children, right, which were the first wave of traitors, right? And to have all of those people assembled on the planet to then virus bomb them seemed like a surefire plan to like eradicate those
it's a bold stroke. I think it's great.
Easy. He's a good. He's Ebenezer good. Get that done, and he's like sorted, right? So never. But actually, that caused him more hassle than he thought, because the loyalists on It's Fan 3 dug in really fucking deep and was like, fuck you! Yep. And they were still alive for months on end. And like, Horus was like, fucking hell, I don't have time fanning around with you
just
fucks.
Fuck off.
Just go away. And even at one point, Angron came down, and then Angron's on the surface, and bloody
it's
Horus
like when you catch your pocket on a door handle, he's like, oh.
Exactly, and Horus is like, God, now fucking Angron's down there, and like, this is taking too long.
Welcome to the In the Tank podcast. Get ready for an hour of hot 40k goodness coming in your ears. You're in the tank now, baby.
We're live.
We are indeed live. Welcome everyone to In the Tank. And I've been told this is episode 30, although I did like debate that with you before the show.
Yeah.
But oh my god, 30 episodes. What?
That's fucking crackers, isn't it? That's blown me away.
It's crack-a-lacking.
Episode.
That's madness.
That's mad.
We're going to have to do something very special for our 50th or something.
I'm amazed you haven't had enough of me by now.
I cannot get enough of my sweet Eddie action.
That's the right
sweet
fucking
Eddie
answer.
Action. Speaking of, I want to ask the community a favour. Can you give us some Q&A questions, potentially, to do our first Q&A episode at some point in the near future, either on the Discord or just pop your comments below. Q&A, anything about anything to do with the hobby or not, I guess.
Or you can just send them by owl.
Send them by owl, yeah.
Whatever's easiest for you, really.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah. That's cool. Familiar. Baboon, if you watch Brass Eye. What is it? Mandrill. If you watch Brass Eye. What? Oh, buddy.
Am I about to have a revelation here?
Okay, yeah. Oh, it's such an Eddie show. It's like the most Eddie show I've ever... Oh, God. Perfect. Okay, awesome. But how you doing, mate? Are you okay?
I'm good. I'm very good. I'm a little bit, fed up of painting Gene Stealers, if I'm honest with you, but I am...
It's almost like you need a palette cleanse.
I fucking do. I tell you what. I'm
Drakari.
I'm really excited to try my yellow AdMech after this.
Yeah, true.
I'm very excited. So, no, I'm getting through them. I am getting through them, but the deadline is ever looming, which is actually kind of good for me because I get that like ADHD superpower of the closer I get to imminent demise, like the faster I work. So should be good.
Just like a Gene Stealer cultist, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
I'm like, oh fuck, it's a planned generations in the making, but we didn't really plan it until yesterday. So yeah, we're getting there now. I've only got like 35 infantry and 3 vehicles to do in 2 weeks, so that's not that much, right? That's not that much.
You'll be right.
I'll be fine. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm good. Despite the fact that I'm fighting this plague, I was with some really cute comments actually asking how I am and stuff, which I'm like, well, thank you, everybody. I had delusional fevers on Monday.
I heard.
Well, yes, you did. Well, I was talking in my sleep about like Matt Berry. And then in the morning, you just weirdly sent me a Matt Berry voicemail, and I was like, "What the fuck, weird life am I living?" So to be honest, I've been cheating hobby time in amongst my illness. Yeah. Well, I've been doing really well actually at painting shit. So I've nearly finished my Gladiator Lancer, which I think actually looks the titties, like with my lions and stuff on the side of it. And I'm also hacking on this lad.
Oh, look at him!
Split screen
boy.
Basilisk. Angels of Redemption Basilisk called Sir Zeke.
Sir Zeke.
I
love your nameplate.
So Zeke is going to like punch a hole in you with his laser cannons and missile launchers and stuff. So doing all right actually. I'm on track to get everything sorted for the onslaught, which is good. Just got to finish my tank, do 10 stern guard, and I'm there. Actually.
Easy money, mate. That's like a walk in the park. You shit that out in an afternoon.
There you go. So theoretically, I should be fine. But yeah, all good. Feeling it.
Good. I love how you're just using your illness as like a sneaky excuse to paint Warhammer. I bet you're like lying on the sofa, like with a blanket over you and a hot water bottle, and Mel walks in and she's like, "Are you all right, darling?" And you're like, "I'm okay." And then as soon as she walks out, you're like, "Quick, get the ballistas out. Do that fucking split
So Monday was fascinating because Monday I was really in a poor state, right? And I slept all morning, but then I like slinked downstairs to like eat some soup, and I just literally wrapped myself up on the sofa and had a tray of like paints and bits, and I just sat there and I was there for like 4 hours, just like tinkering around, and I was like, oh my god, and I went back up and slept, and I was like, right, I'm gonna if I'm self-employed, I'm gonna take a hit of a day off. I'm gonna actually make it a day off and like actually do something half decent. So
good work,
there we
mate.
go, very good. Thank you.
Work. Always be hobbying.
Getting there. But yeah, all good. Also, yes, I had a wicked weekend because I almost forgot to say this, and actually, I'm going to like look at my phone because I want to talk about this. I had a vintage 40k experience.
Yeah, you did, didn't you?
Oh my god, this was awesome! And I met a new hobby mate. So there was this awesome event that was held in a local area, and I forget where it was. So I'm actually just Shefford.
Yeah.
Great Shefford, right? So, yeah. And I met a new friend of mine called Jason, who, hello, Jason. Thank you for listening to the pod. Bless him. He's been listening back to all of our previous episodes and stuff, but welcome to our weirdness.
Good lad.
And Jason, bless him, is like basically runs all these vintage 40k / tabletop events. And it was this wicked drop-in day at Great Shefford, like, Village Hall, where everybody was like coming in and playing like second ed 30k.
Oh, I bet you love that. That's like your dream.
Dude, yeah. So playing like second ed 40k and like various editions of 40k. Everyone's armies was like on display. There was like original Realm of Chaos books and Rogue Trader books and stuff as like part of a little library. And there were like these kids having fun and playing. And I was
That's
like,
lovely.
I was like, oh my God, like what a cool thing. And then he basically was talking to me about like the network that is vintage 40k and how there is just this other world out there that are like beyond our sort of, remit of just like vintage beer hammer. And I'm just like, oh my God, I think this is what I'm craving. So I am putting into a plan of effect to try over time and build 1,500 points of vintage Chaos Space Marines led by Doom Rider.
You love Doom Rider. He's like your spirit animal, isn't he?
Doom Rider's the best! Like, anyone who can help me get a Doom Rider, I will be like very much in your debt. I also want to get a vintage Bloodthirster and pin him.
Yeah.
And use that in my army.
He needs pinning.
Exactly. And stuff like that. So yes, I'm potentially.
I've got a vintage Chaos Spawn, like the really big metal one.
They're cool.
They are cool. These things are awesome.
But yeah, so what do you think of that world?
Really cool,
just like living behind the scenes, right?
It's really cool. It's nice to see it. I think it sounds like a cool guy, and power to you for doing that. It's just nice to give back and do some fun little community things like that. So that sounds awesome.
And yeah, he's invited me for a game of second ed, so I'm totally gonna like call him on that and do it. At some point, maybe on the Battle Barn, like have a guest appearance of second ed. Just that might be fun.
People like second ed. There's quite an interesting calling for like old school games like that.
Yeah. Jamming dice, vortex grenades. There we go. So, also, I do desperately want to get my hands on that whole John Blanche.
I know you keep going on about it.
It looks so good.
Can't you just like add sepia to all your normal paints, and then it's basically the same thing? Like just a drop of sepia.
It looks like a really good double paint set, Ed.
Does it? Really I've not actually looked at it. I will have a goose. Yeah,
a little goosey, Yeah. Of course, we've got to talk about the old previews ahead, which are not to tell us where our timeline kind of, because when the time is out, it would already be out. If that makes sense. But Lucius, right? How are we feeling about that? Like,
he looks sexy, at least his profile does. I think he'll be a really cool model. I hope they get him right. I mean, you can't get him much worse than his current model, right?
No, true.
They can't really miss this one. But
I mean, the greatest of space pervs. I mean, you know, like, God. I mean, I was kind of hoping for Eidolon, if I'm honest. I prefer Eidolon to Lucius.
Yeah.
But, like, yeah, I mean, he's going to be busted strong.
Yeah.
That motherfucker's going to be evil.
I was laughing because I was watching a Valrak clip the other day, and he was saying, you know, it's 100% Lucius. If it's not Lucius, I'll get my ass out on stream. And I was like, yes, that confident.
Nice.
It is him. But I can't wait. It's like tonight-ish that we're going to see the reveal. So
yeah, and of course all the pre-orders for all of the guard stuff and stuff. Well, that's pretty cool. That box looks massive. Even though there's not a crazy amount in there for what people were expecting, that's a fat old fucking box. So, you know, who knows?
Well, my mate might actually be lending me his beautifully painted guard army because he's going back off on deployment for a few months. This is Chris.
Like a true guard, like an actual guard.
Yeah, so he might be lending me that for a little while, and for the battle barn to use there, because I think he's in the process of looking for a new home for the army. So if any of you guys are interested, I'm sure I could send you some pictures. But we are going to hopefully sell it for him while he's away, and if not, then you know he'll go back on eBay when he gets back. But it's a beautiful army, so we're gonna. It's very nice of him, very kind of him to let me use it for a couple of months. So that'd be cool. Yeah, extra army.
And of course, how close are you to getting the barn finished?
We're really close. It's being delayed by the fact that I have to get these bloody GSC ready. But I think what's going to happen is basically I would have been doing it now and then getting the GSC ready for Oxford a bit closer to Oxford. But because I've got this event coming up, I'm swapping it around. So I'm doing the GSC now for the event, and then in between that event and Oxford, I'll get the barn finished up and ready to roll. So it shouldn't be too long. I keep saying this. I'm like, it'll be ready at the end of December. It'll be ready early Jan. It'll be ready late Jan. It'll be ready early Feb. 2027.
I don't know. Who have you got? We haven't talked about this, so like doing it live. But who's your first guest?
I don't know yet. It'll probably be you. We'll see how it goes. Like my mate Paul is very local to me, so he'll no doubt be on there a lot. But he's not really.
He's a good guy. He's
a lovely guy, but he's not really competitive play. Is not really his jam. He's more into like sort of beer hammer and that sort of stuff. Which I think we're probably going to do a little bit of a mix of games on the channel because I love comp, and I think it'd be nice to do some competitive games, and I think it'd also be nice to do some narrative games. So we're going to mix it up. So I'll get a few people on, and it also means I can get more guests because not like competitive. Is not everyone's jam, but
this is not slimy competitive. This is great.
No, it's not. Like you can still have a lot of fun playing competitively, right? So we'll see. I'm gonna get once we've got everything lined up and ready to go, then I'm gonna start lining guests up and get them going because I want to I might just do a stream whenever people are available for the first little while. See what we can do.
Nice.
So get the ball rolling.
I'd love to pop your barn cherry.
Yeah, I need to put a link to the battle barn in the description below, actually. I'll remind myself to do this because I still need 10 more subscribers before I can actually stream. So you have to get to 50 subs before you can stream.
Oh my God.
On YouTube. So I'll put a link to it. So if anyone feels like subscribing to it, then feel free. See if you can push me over the edge.
Speaking of subscribing.
Like,
comment, and subscribe.
Yeah.
Everybody, we've been having like some really lovely comments and some really lovely, people, some community kind of thing. Like I said, ask us some questions for a Q&A episode coming up, like anything within reason, and we'll answer it if that's okay. Also, thank you for our latest Patreon.
Yeah, recently, thank you for subscribing on Patreon, mate. It's much appreciated,
Oh, so good.
Really genuinely helps us.
We just need to cover our costs, peeps.
Yeah, we're getting closer and closer all the time, so it's really good of you guys. We genuinely appreciate it.
No, thank you.
It's like the ultimate thank you for what we do, and we love you. So
Genuinely.
But also, jump into Discord because we are genuinely, the Discord's growing every day. Like with more and more people jumping in, and there's starting to get some cool conversation in there. So please do become a part of our sort of wider community. It's great.
And you get to take the piss out of me and call me a space wolf. So
Russ's hair's out today. He's proper 3-wolf mooning it, aren't you? I love it. I need to
get, do you know it's a fucking mane. It's not a more. Wolves don't look like this. Lions look like this.
I think we have to do a special thing right later this year. I think in December, Russ and I need to make a Christmas calendar. for like a New Year's calendar.
What
of
is
us.
this? What
you
is
and
this?
me. Like, I think it's gonna be like, what's that one where they're all naked in it? It's gonna be fucking.
So, I don't think we should do this.
I'm up for it. I'm up for doing.
Do you know what I think we should do? Is for Christmas choose each other a kill team that we have to
Lame.
That we have to do.
Naked calendar.
Oh, okay, no, fine. I'm not doing a naked calendar. I'm just not.
It's just be me then, guys. Sorry.
Just like, there you go.
I just have a cardboard cutout of Russ.
Teeny tiny bollocks. Right, okay, let's do this. So, yes, thank you for our latest Patreon. Thank you for everyone that likes, comments, and subscribes.
Yes, thank you, guys.
First topic of today. Is Warhammer too expensive? Is it too bloody expensive?
It's eye-wateringly expensive at the minute. Like
now, the reason why I'm talking about this now is because Warhammer's always been spenny, right? It's never been a cheap hobby per se.
No
matter how you like justify it, no matter how you pitch it, it's always been expensive relative to household income at whatever period in history that we're doing it. But the reason why I wanted to talk about it today is because there has been so many subtle price increases, and I was sat down the other day, and I was like, and I remember sending you this, and I was like, right, what do I need in my sort of like PDF of like what I need to finish from my various armies, right?
Yeah,
I've got several armies on the go, and I'm like, right, if I was to like get everything and have everything in inverted commas done, we're never done really.
No,
I was like, this is what I need to finish everything, and it'd be done. And I'm not going to say how much it was, but I sent it to you, and you were like, fuck, when did Warhammer get so expensive?
Yeah.
And I was like, yeah,
it's ridiculous.
When did it get expensive? When did it get this expensive?
There's been some like sneaky price increases over the last few years. I think since COVID, when they had this like huge push, because obviously everyone was stuck indoors and they were like, what do I do with myself? I know I'll start Warhammer. That was great. That was a great time to buy Warhammer, by the way, because it was
if you could buy it. If you could buy it,
if you could get it, because they were still delivering and stuff. But once it got after that, the prices have started just sort of jumping, like 5%, 3%, whatever, every time. And I think that it's getting to a point now. I know that everything's fucking expensive these days, like food and heating and electricity and all that shit. But like Warhammer just feels extortionate. Like I can't imagine buying something full price from the Games Workshop website now. It's nuts. I don't think I've done it for literally 2 years because I just can't afford it. Like the only time I'd ever do it is if I had a voucher, which you don't really get unless you buy stuff regularly from there. So I think, for third-party places, your local gaming shop and all that sort of stuff, that they're a bit better because you can get like up to 20% off, 30 in some cases. From places like Glasshammer, if you subscribe to their sort of elite tier and stuff, but then you're paying a monthly sub for that. So like, it's a difficult one, but I do think, you can still snag some deals on eBay, especially for some armies and especially ones that have been in the Combat Patrol magazine and had like loads of people have got X model because it's just cheap. That's fine. But on the whole, fuck me, is it eye-wateringly expensive? Like when I started collecting some AdMech for my next project, post the GSC, once I've done these, I was like, shit, this army's expensive. Not only do you need loads of it because it's a hoardy army, but all the boxes are like 40, 50 quid each. It's mad.
Yeah.
Mad.
And I mean, it's really hard because, both of us, like, we're not exactly like, you don't get me wrong, times are hard at the moment, but we're not, neither one of us are like, oh my God, I'm desperate to like make rent, right? But, we're extremely lucky in that regard. Like the rest of the UK is on fire right now, right? And my heart goes out to you if you're struggling right now because, like, it probably feels like no one gives a shit about you, especially in the UK and to some degree America and Europe and stuff like that as well. But like, due to a variety of like socio and economic reasons, not to like throw the political hat in the ring, but the UK is kind of taking a bit of a kick in at the moment. And it's like, considering that's the birthplace of Warhammer, you would have thought that like GW would be a little bit more socially aware of that and to kind of like, price stuff appropriately. Because at the end of the day, right, it's not going to be adults with money that miss out on the hobby. it's going to be the kids, right?
Yeah, that's
that really
the problem.
Get fucked over.
It's the future generations, which are as we've discussed before, the lifeblood of the future hobby,
right? Yeah, and that's appalling, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, I would do anything for my kid. I love my son to the moon and back, right? And like, I would try and facilitate his hobbies as much as possible going forward indefinitely, right? But like, that's a very privileged position to be in the world, right? And it's
just
like,
don't tell him about AdMech. Just pretend they don't.
No, exactly. Oh God,
AdMech. What are they? Nah, fuck that. Yeah, oh God.
I have a funny feeling with his temper, he's going to be a World Eaters player,
or an Orcs player, or something,
or just to spite me, a Space Wolf player,
yeah,
or a Space Wolf player.
Imagine that you called Russ playing fucking Dark Angels, and him called Leo playing Space Wolves. It has to happen. Oh my God, that's so good. That would fucking tick you right off, that one. Oh,
be funny, wouldn't it?
God damn. I'm looking forward to that. Every time I see him, when he's a bit older, I'm going to be like, have you heard of the Space Wolves? They're the coolest, actually. He'll be like, shut the fuck up, Ed.
But yeah, no, and it's just, I'm getting to the point now where it's like, I'm starting to notice it. And I'm just like, this is a problem now.
It is.
This is actually kind of a
problem.
When
5 dudes cost £40, you're like, what the fuck is that?
Yeah.
Like, it used to be about 30 quid or something, and it's just nuts. It's nuts.
Well, I remember back in today.
Where
you're
120.
what tended to be in the early 2000s, your like go-to amount, and actually prices never went up that much for a long time.
No, they didn't.
Was your basic regiment of for fantasy and also for 40k was £12 to £15.
Wow.
And that was that was your unit of 10 troops.
Yeah.
Or 12 troops, or in some cases more. Boys, I think boys came in boxes of 20, right? Same with guard came in boxes of 20. And also your fantasy regiments also were the same.
Yeah.
So you'd get like 20 elves or something for £12 or something. And like, and I know that is, a lot has changed, but we're bearing in mind the time where the pound to the dollar was 2 to 1 at one point, right?
Yeah, it was, yeah.
So like, for a single pound, you can get $2. Not the case anymore. So yeah, I don't know. And God damn, poor New Zealand / Japan / Australia.
They have it the worst.
Fucking hell. To the point where they're not even getting any more product for what they're paying. It's just import duty, right?
My mate he lives in Australia, right? We were chatting the other day on Discord, and we were saying about how like 3D printing is obviously so prevalent there because we've discussed this in the past, like 3D printing revolution and all that. So check out our episodes. Yeah. But he was saying that if a mate of his was just starting to get into the game, and he's just sort of like a normal bloke. He's not like mega wealthy, and he was like, I want to play Thousand Suns, and so my mate basically printed him like 1,500 points worth of Thousand Suns for like a couple of $100 or something like that, like Australian dollars, which is a really good deal. And then he said, "Do you want to know how much Magnus is if you buy him off the Games Workshop website in Australia? $200." Same price, 1,500 points he's printed with 3D printing, and you could get a Magnus for the same price. That's just
wild.
That blows me away. I'm just wild. What the hell?
The thing is, as well, is it's like, if GW was struggling or they were, in a position where they weren't as hyper dominant as they are, I would be way more lenient, right?
Yeah.
But there was a recent Guardian thing where, like, I think one of my students sent me a link to it, and they were like, "Is this your hobby thing that you like?" And I was like, "Yes, it is." Where it was in the Guardian, where it's like they're building another factory in the UK, right? And it like to facilitate their growing demand for their products, right? And it's like, surely that would then keep prices at a competitive level. We're not even talking about like ripping the prices down to the point where things even seem reasonable. We're just like, stop hiking prices all the time, right?
Yeah, because I mean they've just entered the FTSE 100, haven't they? We were talking about that. Like, it's amazing. Like, don't get me wrong, this is a great thing for the hobby because them making money means they're going to keep going and make more shit for us. So like, you can't complain. But yeah, it is a fucking expensive hobby at the minute to get into.
It is.
So yeah, I think I really feel bad for like 13-year-olds now because
Yeah,
they're gonna walk into that
Awful.
shop with their mum or dad or whatever, and they're gonna go, oh, this looks cool, and they're gonna walk
Yeah.
around, and their parents are gonna pick a box up, and they're gonna be like,
No.
fuck her, no.
Yeah. Like, no.
You should get into fucking cars or golf or some other cheaper hobby, which are also expensive. So,
yeah, I mean, dude,
it's nuts.
It's sad, isn't it? It is sad. And like, because a combat patrol or whatever, just to start off,
£100 now.
Oh god, that's an investment.
It used to be like way cheaper.
40.
Than that. Yeah.
40. And you got a load. You got a lot in it.
Unreal.
For army boxes and battle forces, which I think was what they used to be called, were like 40 quid. Yeah. And that,
So I remember them being like 70 quid. And I think that was quite a good entry point. And now they're like 100 quid. And you usually get them for about 85, 80 quid, depending on how much discount you can get. But even that's still a lot. And as we've discussed in one of our other previous episodes, some of the combat patrols are pretty shit for that value, like the Space Marines one.
Awful. But yeah, no, it's just, at the end of the day, right, like, you've just got to keep your young bloods in the game.
Yeah.
And this is not a way of doing it.
Also, don't forget, right, one other thing. How much are these little bastards now?
Yeah,
Paints, right?
True.
They're expensive now. I remember the day where there'd be like a couple of quid a pot. They're like £3.75, £4, £5. Some of the contrast paints are even more expensive. It's unreal, genuinely.
Well, this is it, because you actually raised a really good point there, right? If you're a young kid buying a combat patrol and that's it, right? Fair enough. That's still quite extortionate and that's harsh. But you then add paints, primers, glue, clippers,
codex.
Oh, fuck. Then you're looking at like 150 probably by the time
easily.
you're done, if that.
Easily.
And that's
if your parents are buying
that's
that for you from Games Workshop, because that's where most of them will see it, they won't know about element gains and stuff until,
And they need someone to talk to, right, as well. They need
exactly. So they'll walk in, they'll buy a £100 combat patrol, they'll buy 20 quid's worth of paints and brushes, and they'll buy a £40 codex. That's nearly 200 quid.
That's awful.
Mental.
No.
It's like 160 quid or so. It's just bonkers,
And like I said, the people that it affects are the most vulnerable.
And you need, as you said, hobby snips, glue, etc. So it's just goes up and up. Yeah.
I just wonder where the ceiling's going to be, where everybody as a community just goes, nah. You know what I mean? Just goes like, nah, I can't take this
The thing is,
anymore.
don't get me wrong, they do some good value boxes. Like, usually at the start of editions and stuff, they'll give you those better value boxes. And I think as a newer player, that's the best time to get in. Because you've got a lot on your plate there, especially if you split it with a mate. Like if you have a mate at school or something and you're a younger person and you like one of you likes Tyranids and one of you likes Space Marines and you get in at the start of an edition and buy that box, split it between you, that's a lot better because you're getting, more bang for your buck there. But that's really the only way to do it outside of either doing it third-party buying or going through eBay or something.
I do actually agree. That's a really good point. Actually, I think if you had a sibling that you could game with or a friend and you would split a box, that would be perfect, right? Because then you've got everything there ready to go, to go for it. But the thing is, right? You might not want to play Marines and Tyranids.
No, that is the thing,
right?
Of course.
If you're a youngster that wants to desperately play like Grey Knights or Tau or Orcs or something, right? And then you're being told that, oh no, that's not the highest value faction, pay this faction.
Yeah.
That's going to be your first thing ever to like turn you off big time, right?
Yeah.
Like you need to play what you want to play, right? From that and get that sorted.
Yeah.
Which leads us into our second topic today. How do we start a new army project? Now, this is potentially me leaning out there for some people that either want to come back to like the modern hobby or, I have people that are like lore people that are kind of like tempted by the hobby every now and again. And it just seems like this infinite sea of like, how the hell do you get into a faction? Where do I start? What do I do? And, and it might not even be a question for new players because this could be a concept for people that have armies already and they're like, oh, I don't know what to do next in my thing. So what would be your advice to people, Ed? Like, what would be your advice to get people stuck
Start
in?
small. That's my advice.
Okay, cool.
I think it's really important not to overwhelm yourself in this hobby. And we touched on this before in previous episodes, but I think one of the dangers of getting a box like Leviathan or such and such is when you open that up, there's a lot of grey plastic in that box, and you're like, holy fuck, am I supposed to build and paint all of that? And I think that a lot of people will just put it away because they're just like, it's too much. Obviously, splitting the box helps, but I think if you look at it, the perfect place or situation for you to start is when you've got either a local gaming scene or you've got a mate that's doing it, or a few mates that are getting into it around the same time as you, because it's much easier to sort of like nudge each other along, and it also gives you a good opportunity to sort of build towards something like a 500-point game of Warhammer, or like a combat patrol game or something like that, where you all go out, you buy a combat patrol, and you just try the combat patrol game mode, and then you expand that into 500 points of army of whatever your faction is. And I would say it's difficult as a new player or a returning player who's been out of touch for a while, because I think you're not going to necessarily know what the key units are for your army anymore that you should be taking in every list. Because you're not going to be having your finger on the pulse, or you're just not going to have any knowledge. So I think talking to people in your local scene or doing a bit of Googling, a bit of research as to, what people are playing, look at lists that have been doing well, and just sort of try and figure out what units are running across most of the things that people are playing. And then just start with those. And because building things that are going to be in almost every list going forward is such great advice, because you're then kind of making less work for yourself. Because if you do something like a very specific detachment and you just build around that, it's great. But then at the end of it, when you go to try a new detachment, you've only got the units that work for that detachment and nothing that you can now really use apart from one or two units to try that new one. Guard are really bad for this because they've got this detachment.
It's all
or
nothing, isn't it? It's an all or nothing style approach.
Things like Gene Stealer cults are great because your Acolyte hybrids with Flamers, you're using them in almost every detachment. Your Neophytes, you're probably using them in most detachments as well. Your Ridge Runners, and that sort of stuff. Like, again, you're pretty much always going to have one. So those kind of units where you're going to need them, get those painted first,
I think I totally agree with that stance, in as much as knowledge is power, and it actually pays to do a little bit of research ahead of time, right? Where it's like, you need to mirror what you want to buy with your play style. Yep. You want to kind of go, what sort of army do I want to do? Obviously, you need to make sure that aesthetically, like the army is what
big. That's
into,
actually
right?
Probably the biggest thing.
I agree. Like weirdly, you're going to be spending a lot of time with these models over the course of hours, right? Like, you need to make sure that drive inside you is like, oh yeah, these are fucking awesome.
Yep.
And obviously, there are concepts even within factions where it's like, as you said, with detachments and stuff, and for people that don't know what detachments are or whatever necessarily, it's like the play style of your army, even within your army, can go down radically different pathways. For example, if I was to hypothetically get into Tyranids, you could go, right, I'm going to do like a very swarmy army with like lots of little guys and lots of recurgence of like bringing those units back to life, and to have, a couple of support units and stuff like that to help with that. Or I could run like a massive Crusher Stampede, so like loads of just big boys, and just go down that. So even within your faction, there are so many weird kind of builds that you kind of got to sit on and have a think about it. At least have a think about it. Yep. But if you are stuck for ideas for that, do what I always call the classic sort of second, third ed approach, which is 2 troops and a HQ.
Yeah.
2 troops and a HQ. Like, get 2 battle line units and a HQ. And then get that painted, and that'll be what, like 400 points, 500
points?
Just
don't get tactical marines.
No, exactly. And that'll give you enough to do probably about 400, 500 points of games, possibly. Yeah. And then you can do a bit of beer hammer with some mates and see what works. Yeah,
because you don't need to be the most competitively viable when you start out. That shouldn't be your goal, because at 500 points, the game's not balanced around 500 points anyway. It's balanced around 2,000 points.
Yeah.
So you should really just be getting the core of your army down. Get 1 or 2 cool units in there that you like, if you like some particular character in there, you think, oh, he's cool, I'll just get him in there, you'll probably use him anyway. So like that's how you start. It's interesting. Like the aesthetic thing, I really agree on, because I think those are the 2 sort of core elements: aesthetic and gameplay. Because if you naturally feel like you're a defensive player, or you like to play tough, slow things, then something more like, Deathwing Terminators or like the Death Guard or, whatever, they're going to suit your play style more. And if you're more of like I want to be doing flashy, fast plays, then you're going to be looking at Jakari, Eldar, some other army like that. So you do want to think about that. But the aesthetic thing is huge. If you play an army and you're not really that bothered about how it looks, you're going to have a miserable time painting it.
Yeah, miserable time.
Yeah,
it doesn't
really
work.
will.
It just never works.
No.
Never works. And for you vets out there that are like, oh, I know all this already and stuff, think about this as a contrasting factor, just to contrast what Ed said. Think about armies that might take you out of your comfort zone a bit, actually.
Yeah, that's cool.
And make you go, oh, I normally play this play style. Can I move into another one? If you're normally a melee-focused guy or gal or non-binary, I'm going to go for a shooty faction, or I'm going to go for a movement-based faction, or like a tricksy faction, or a psychus faction, or whatever, right? Go outside of your comfort zone. Don't necessarily double up. Like, do something different. And also, think about your core concepts if you're a vet hobbyist. And what I mean by that is take a singular strand concept and run with it, which is what I've done recently with my word bearers, where I was like, I fucking love Possessed. Why do I love Possessed? Well, I love that whole like Galvor back thing, and I like the word bearers. And okay, cool. If I'm going to do a Possessed army, I'm going to do a very word bearers heavy army. Fuck it, I'm just going to do 30 Possessed and like whatever else. And that's my concept.
Yeah,
you could do the same with like Space Wolves and I'm going to do a 13th company force, or like just and thematically like hone that to like a really spear pointed edge and like really define what you're going to go into, and then do that and try and make it as distinct as possible with your concept, because if you just stumble into it without really knowing what you're doing, and you are a vet player, you're going to be like getting everything unnecessarily, and you're going to be doubling up on things that you might not need, and like getting all that, especially if you play like Marines or something where you've got like a deck that's like that thick, and it's like you're not going to be able to get all those units. So like be really specific with what you're getting. Do you know what I mean? Like
100%. Yeah.
Does that make sense?
That's
like
good advice,
conceptualize what you're trying to do.
Yeah, just have like a theme and lean into it. And then I think it's also quite good, like when you do start a new project, don't just build like 500 points and then jump onto another new project, unless you're bored of that one and it's not suiting you, for example. But like, just keep plowing on, get your way up to 2,000 points. And then I think at that point, when you've got your 2,000 point list done, if you're going to go to an event or something with it, do that, see how you feel. And then at the end of that, you can kind of make your mind up as to whether you want to start either expanding into different detachments and therefore play styles within that army, or whether you want to just drop it for a little bit and go on to a new project. But like sticking with an army for a good couple of years is a great idea, because like I've got nearly 10,000 points of painted Necrons. It's taken me like 3 years to do it, but like, just slowly building those up. Now I can basically play pretty much whatever without needing to paint too much, like, maybe a unit or two. So I think there is like a lot of power to that if you enjoy a faction, and then you can work out from there and start looking at new factions once you've done that. But I'd say that the danger with this hobby is always to want to like, you'll play against another army and you'll go, God, that was cool. And then you'll buy like a whole load of that while you're still in the middle of your first project. And then you send your friend a voicemail of you going, I'm just going to do a palette cleanser of like 5 of these guys. And then 2 months later, he's like, I'm falling to chaos.
To be fair, my loyalty to the first Legion was quite absolute.
It was.
I have played Dark Angels in every competitive event I've ever played. So, I think there's a part of me that to save the hobby for myself, I'm going to need to diversify so I don't get bored.
No, I think that's fair.
So in that example, but I hear what you're saying. No, I know. I hear what
all
you're
the watchers in the dark are watching you like,
swat. I know. Well, in the lore, when Luther turned, there was like 10 of them round his bed, just like staring at him, like,
that's well
what
creepy.
Did we do? So imagine me like waking up, like all like
paralysis shit.
So like they're all like watching me, like, why have you turned from us, Russ? So like there we go. But like, like you said, just make it natural. Don't go mad. Mm-hmm. Like there's always going to be like, yeah, I'm going to buy loads of kits, pew, 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 pew. But, like, you don't have to. Like, take your time.
Yeah.
Settle down. It's all okay.
It is.
All okay.
Yeah. Just
But
enjoy it. That's the main thing.
Look,
take it at a pace that you enjoy, right?
At any point this hobby feels weird and like you're clocking into a second job, don't do it.
Right, I'm quitting now.
And don't be and don't be too doughy-eyed by the new hotness.
That's the danger.
The new hotness always seems amazing.
Like everyone, including yourself, is going to be pivoting right on the edge of jumping into the new faction or the old Emperor's Children. You're going to be like, when those reveals are out, you're going, do I click buy?
I will want a squad. I know.
Yeah, you go.
But I've got plenty of heretic stuff to do. Like Death Guard's coming out this year, and I want that character so bad, right?
Yeah.
So, but just enjoy the hobby, enjoy it in whatever form that takes, and it's all good. And if that is your thing, and you do need to buy new stuff, then whatever, you buy new stuff.
You do you.
You do you. You do you. It's all cool. It's all cool. Awesome. Very cool indeed. Mm-hmm. So on that subject of coolness and factions, why are Space Marines so goddamn cool?
Who doesn't love a robust man in a suit of mechanical armor?
Chesty lad. Who doesn't love a chesty lad?
Who doesn't love gigantic shoulder pads?
So we were talking in the past, right, about how, if we could have Magical Christmas Land, why we would change it so that at the beginning of New Edition, you don't always have Space Marines in a box fighting X, Y, and Z. Right?
Ultramarines, especially.
Yeah, exactly. And how Space Marines are always like front and center with their sort of promotion and stuff, and why they make so much money for the company and stuff like that for GW and stuff. But why are they so fucking cool? Because they are cool. Let's just objectively say that right now, right? No matter how jaded you are in the hobby, right? And you might prefer other factions, and I totally get that. But Space Marines are fucking awesome.
They are.
They are awesome. And they saved this game into being like one of the greatest games of all time. Why are they so cool? Why are they so cool, Ed? Why are they cool?
I think it's because they sort of embody the human sort of warlike, this ultra warrior, like the superhuman version of humanity, like where you are peak, your peak intelligence, musculature, like everything. You've got the best armor, you've got the best weapons. You are literally just, his angels, right? And I think that also you look at them, and I think this is another really cool thing that highlights how cool they are, is that because Imperial Guard exist as a playable faction within the game, you've got this direct comparison to normal ass men, and then you get a Space Marine next to it, and you're like, God, they are big, like they're especially the Primaris, they are muscly boys.
Despite the fact that Acadian could literally be the world's strongest man if you brought Acadian to our universe, they would be 6 foot
hench.
They would be. Do you know what I mean? They would be hot. They would be hot shit, right? They would be gnarly. They would be they would be Arnold Schwarzenegger, essentially, right?
Yeah.
But compared to a Space Marine, as you say, it's a good yardstick, right?
Yeah.
For everything else in the universe.
They are just beyond it, right? They are the unobtainable.
Well, this is it. I think for me, it comes down to, just expand on your point very quickly. It comes down to two things that I can see. And one is this subconscious shoot from the hip thing, where it's the ultimate power fantasy, right? Where it's to walk around in inches thick ceramite and just be this walking tank.
It literally
just is. And to have that weird nobility in there as well, and the whole vibe of the Imperium and how Space Marines fight is so tribal and so I don't know, just Neanderthalic in a way, where it's for the Emperor, bro. It's very team and very much it's a football team and very chanty, and it just in your brain it kind of flicks that subconscious let's go, boys.
I think there's something about Space Marines, and I think without this I don't think they would be anywhere near as cool, which is I think because Space Marines have all their different chapters, etc.
I was going to talk about this.
I think that there's always something that personally pertains to you as an individual. And I think that's what really draws people to Marines, is because you can look at Marines and you can go, very cool, that real power fantasy, as you said, and they're awesome. But then you look at it and you think, well, why do they speak to me directly? And then you look at it and you think, maybe you're underneath, you're like a frothing crusader, and like obviously subconsciously, or like maybe you wear 3 Wolf Moon t-shirts and howl at the full moon. Maybe you just like stoic, quiet nights, and you love that kind of medieval shit,
Or maybe you listen to My Chemical Romance. And,
exactly. And
like,
you wear your hair over your eye. And
like, go, nevermore!
Yeah, exactly. And like, it's just, there's always something about each of these chapters which I think can speak to you on an individual level, whether that be looking at things like the salamanders, or whether that, with their humanitarian side and all this sort of stuff, or whether it's even a gameplay thing. But like, people look at it and they just go, that speaks to me. Space vampires, fucking love that.
You've hit the nail on the head. That was going to be my next massive point here, so well done. I think people don't get Marines until they see the diversification of what it means to like Space Marines, right? Where it's like, as you say, there are so many cultures in humanity that are represented in Space Marines, right? Throughout so many centuries of what we know as history in our universe history, right? Where it's like, if you're into that whole like World War One vibe for Death Guard, even for the traitors as well, right? And you said like 3 Wolf Moon t-shirts or whatever for socials, but it's true. But it's true though. Like, that is going to instinctively attract you to that on that sort of like
it's more the Viking aspect for Space Wolves. I think that really pulls a lot of people into them.
But like, and it's, you then start to project, right, where you're like, oh, if I was a Space Marine, I would be this kind of Space Marine and stuff like that. And then you get to customize it even further, where it's like, I can kind of paint these however I want to paint these, even within that framework of what we're doing. Right?
Give them all nameplates. Why not?
Exactly, right? And it's like, there's so much complexity to it, which isn't just lads in armor. It's something so much deeper.
Brotherhood, right? It's your brotherhood.
Yeah, absolutely. And like, they're so hard and they survive so many battles, and just like, I don't know, man. It's really hard not to get suckered into the romance of a Space Marine.
Yeah. I think they're also very heroic, and I think that people like that, like in the lore, and it's all of this sort of like, come, I'll hold you, brother, and they're like hobbling them along, and sort of dragging them out the line of fire, and and it's things like when I've talked about this loads of times because I just love it. It's like that image of the Crimson Fists on their big like hill where they're all shooting all the orcs. It's just that like last stand of humanity against the stars, and it's just that peak. Oh, it's just,
do you know what I find really interesting about it as well, right? It's simultaneously hyper masculine to the point of parody.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like so over the top and outrageous that it is we know it's kind of a parody anyway, right? Yeah. We've talked about this before. We like grim dark irony, right? But also it's like weirdly like pro sort of like, I don't know, connection between men as well, right? In a really interesting way, where it's like, it's quite like the intimacy between like Space Marine brothers, and I don't mean that in like a literal sense unless you aren't Emperor's children, right? But like, do you know what I mean? It's quite like intimate and quite like, like quite like monkish, where you've got all of these dudes like that are like gathered together and they know each other intricately and intimately over the course of centuries, right? And it's like, and they are very like, they'll touch each other's shoulders and they're like hit each other on the pauldron and stuff. And it is quite like, we can do this. We can like hold this together and like, and I kind of think in a weird kind of psycho way, it's quite sweet. It's quite like sweet that all these like massive gene-rich fucking like Neanderthal blokes are still quite like cool with each other. They got that connection with each other, right? And they build those bonds. Very deep. It's like really deep. Like they know each other over centuries, and like I don't know. It's kind of interesting.
I think it also speaks to us because humans we're a warlike race. Like at the end of the day, we there's wars ongoing all the time in the world, and there always has been. Like since we've been around, we've been fighting each other, and I think that especially in the modern day, for a lot of people in the West, especially where we haven't really had much war for a little while, thank God. It's an outlet for that in a way, like, you know, and it is a way of, like, you know, putting out your like your brotherhood, your warring brotherhood on the battlefield, and kind of like getting to sort of experience that in a weird kind of way through the stories you create and, you know, the worlds you build. And I think it is really cool. Like, the Space Marines are an amazing foil for that sort of stuff.
I agree.
They are really cool. And don't get me wrong, like, you can still do this with any of the other things in the game, any of the other races and things like that, you know. They're all different. But I think the Space Marines, because they're human in a way, they're like, you know, human plus, like they speak to a lot more people. It's always said this, like, when World of Warcraft, right, one of the most popular factions in the game, which is a fantasy game with loads of fantasy races like trolls and elves,
humans, right?
and Tauren, which are literally like minotaurs. It's humans, yeah. The people play humans, and that's interesting. I find, like, psychologically,
it's just projectionism, isn't it?
It is, yeah.
Projectionism.
You
Human
almost,
fighters,
yeah,
it's
you're
like
putting
human
yourself
warriors.
out there. Yeah, in D&D,
Yeah,
it's the same
that was
thing.
always the class, right? It's just like human warrior done. Let's do this.
I'm always
right?
like a little gnome because I just love being tiny.
See, guess what my favorite WoW class is very quickly. Tauren.
I would have thought it would have been a Tauren, yeah.
Big old
Minotaur, big old beast, yeah, of course.
Yeah, like, and D&D Minotaurs. I love a Minotaur.
Yeah,
but like, why do you think Space Marines are so cool? Everybody, like, you know, like, I'm glad that they exist for so many reasons, but like, and I find them weirdly sweet in a kind of, like, don't get me wrong, they're fucking monsters, right? Yeah. They're like engineered, Frankensteined, fucking gnarly,
more so than ever
killers.
Now with the Primaris.
Yeah, exactly. They're fucking murdering bastards, right? But weirdly, throughout all of that, I still find them endearing. It's really funny because kind of sweet.
You'll have this moment where it's like a couple of like Black Templars are on the battlefield, just like frothing, fucking mental, and just killing all these like elves or whatever, and they're just sending their souls to Slanesh, and they're like, ah, and it's just like they'll turn around and be like, "Brother, are you okay?" And he's like, "I'm all right, brother." It's just like that connection, that brotherhood, you know.
But even with that, one of the reasons why I'm loving this new book that I'm reading is one of my favorites of all time, called The Talon of Horus, right? Because it's all about the Legion Wars.
Yeah.
And it's all about how the traitors survived in the Eye of Terror for like 10,000 years. And like how brutal that was.
I should imagine.
And like even then, right, that these guys are scumbaggy traitors that are living in the Eye of Terror. They still have honor codes.
Yep.
Right? They still
the only morals
use
they have
the
left.
acronyms. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
They still have the acronyms of like brothers and stuff, and they have that respect. And there's still like the codes of conduct.
You can
right?
also see why the Horus heresy hurt so much. Like why that like massive fracture between legions like created so much pain and so many lasting wounds that will frankly never be healed, you know? Like in many cases. Like,
you have a perfect wet blend here, Ed. Are you going to do it?
No.
Oh!
No, yeah, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. So, you know, all of the... Fuck
I'm
off,
trying to help you with your blends. I'm trying to help you with your blends.
You put me off now. So, yeah, you know, it's all of these huge losses that have brought, you know, the legions that currently exist together and have split off all of the chaotic legions. And there have been some incredibly big losses to the Imperium over the years, which brings us around to our next topic. What are some of the Imperium's greatest losses? Thank you.
Well done, Ed. Well done.
You didn't have to fucking highlight it.
Well, look. I've been doing quite good with my blends.
You've been doing really well,
and you need to sort your shit. So I
just leave it to you. I quite enjoy your blending.
Thank you very much. So yes, everybody, this is our lore topic of today. Like the greatest losses that have ever hit, like the Imperium, or defeats that have ever hit the Imperium. Whoa, there's been some gnarly ones over the years, but I'm going to start with one that's been one of the most recent and probably one of the most devastating, which was the fall of Cadia / the opening of the Great Rift.
Yeah.
So, Rift. Sorry, that's just my second life coming through there. So, wowzers, the fall of Cadia.
Yeah.
I am surprised that this happened because... It was part of the Black Crusade campaign in the early 2000s.
Yeah.
And it was always the thing that if Chaos took Cadia, then they would have almost a straight beeline straight to Terra again, right?
Yeah.
And that Cadia was the last bastion of humanity. Little did people know that with Cadia's falling would obviously create so much turmoil in the form of the Great Rift. The Great Rift, still again. The Great Rift. Which is so fucked to think about. That not only has the Imperium lost Cadia, but to have so much reinforcement from the ruinous powers and also half of the universe like falling into darkness is just like fucking hell.
It's bad.
So obviously, the actual battle for Cadia itself was gnarly. You even had your lad Trazin. Was he involved in it?
He always rocks up. He's always
the Pokeball guy, right? Is that Trazin?
Yeah.
So Trazin was even like knocking around. Yeah, because he like let out Inquisitor Greyfax. He let out an old custodian that he had in storage. And then he nicked bloody old man Creed when the bloody he Pokeballed Creed, which is, do you not know that?
No.
Yeah, so just to let anybody know. So
is this Ursula's dad?
Yeah, he Pokeballed him before he died.
Oh, so he's still alive?
He's like in his bloody fucking...
In his vaults.
His hall of vaults or whatever. So essentially, if nobody knows, Cadia was wrecked by Abaddon, right?
Yeah, he dropped a Blackstone Fortress on it, didn't he?
He did. So Abaddon... It's
rude.
It is rude. So Abaddon had his last crusade, I think it was the 13th Black Crusade. And he was basically united all of the Demon Primarchs into that one last assault against Cadia, right? In an attempt to destroy Cadia so that he had no issues in regard to the pylons and stuff like that to stop his push going forward, right? And he literally threw everything at Cadia. He threw everything that he could at Cadia. And to Cadia's back in, they did remarkably well.
Yeah.
Granted, you had Grey Knights at Cadia, you had Dark Angels at Cadia, you had Imperial Fists at Cadia, you had various Sisters of Battle at Cadia, you had Saint Celestine at Cadia, you had a true Avengers level defense. You even at one point had the fucking Legion of the Damned at Cadia.
Of course they rocked up, yeah.
So, actually, Abaddon originally got deflected off Cadia, and it looked like Abaddon was actually going to have to go back to the Eye of Terror and lick his wounds again.
Yeah.
But then Abaddon did the ultimate fuck you and literally hurled a Blackstone Fortress at Cadia and ripped apart the planet at its fundamental core, where it was the ultimate, if I can't have it, no one can action, right?
Yeah.
And the planet fell before the guard did, because the planet was ripped asunder. Obviously, kind of similar to Gaunt's Ghost, right, with old Tanith.
Yeah.
And now we have Cadians that exist that are just Crusader platoons or whatever. And in doing so, made it so that the warp tore asunder and made half the universe go into darkness and basically condoned thousands of Imperial worlds to death.
Bad shit happened
incursion.
Afterwards, yeah.
So you've got Imperium Nihilus, which is all the blackened part of the Imperium, right? And it's just where'd you go from there?
It's a big loss. That is a really good choice. And it's interesting because when he blew up Cadia, he blew it up, and what happened was it just turned into tiny little floating chunks with buildings on top that somehow survived. I love that. Did you see that in the Hammer and Bolter trailer the other day? I was thinking to myself, if a planet explodes and there will be chunks of it, sure, but I don't think the buildings are going to survive on said chunk. But maybe they rebuilt that. Yeah, maybe they rebuilt them. Sure. Yeah, maybe. It's a cool idea. I like it.
It's very grit and dirt.
It's very much like The Rock. Fun. It reminds me of The Rock. But it is cool. I love that. So, but no, it's interesting as well, with Cadia now, obviously the relics from Cadia are carried around by the officers and stuff, and they have little pots of soil from Cadia and stuff like that.
Oh, that's cute. That's cute. Actually,
in that Death Wielders book, one of the officers is from Cadia, and he has a little pot of soil that he sprinkles when people die and stuff, and in various things, and when they have victories on the battle. It's so that Cadia is always with them. They're always there. Although that book is fucking dark because like an entire regiment of Cadians was walking across some fields, like literal miles of Cadian soldiers were walking across some fields, marching against the Tyranids. And basically the field was actually just like, it looked like sludge, and it actually just caught them all in it, injected them with some kind of neurotoxin, which froze them all alive and is slowly digesting them. And this guy sees this, and he's looking out there, and he's like, what the fuck? And he hears a moan from one of them and runs over and like grabs the soldier, and he just pulls away at the waist, and he's just like been digested, and he's all just guts and shit. And there's a lady who is one of the Catachans with him, and she's like, they're dead, just trust me, they're all dead. But they're not dead. They're all being slowly digested, and they're all alive. And he drops his little pot of soil on the ground and just throws it on the floor, and he just like gives it up because he just says that there's Cadia's lost. Yeah, I am the last Cadian on the planet. And he just like it really breaks him, bless him. But like, Cadia, like what I'm trying to get across is the relationship between Cadian soldiers now and their planet, Cadia, is such a big loss.
Powerful thing.
Yeah, it's really like a big, deep thing.
And do you know what? Again, fair play for GW for doing it.
Like,
I kind of want more
Kill
of
your
these.
darlings, right?
I want more of this. I want more of this, please.
100%.
Like, push the plot forward by making us feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
Like, it's fine. We can take it.
You need
it's fine.
conflict.
It's fine. And it'll give you excuses to write a billion books on the subject and kind of go crazy. So that was my first choice. What is your first choice?
My first choice is also an absolute devastation of a certain planet, but this time it is Baal.
Oh.
And it was what was responsible for this one was an entirely different foe, the Tyranids, particularly the Leviathan Tyranids, who basically just gobbled it.
Yes, absolutely. I think that was the biggest concentration of Tyranids from Leviathan ever.
From what I understand, it was like a massive frond of Highsworn Leviathan.
Now, what a fucking grudge match that is. Like all the Blood Angels and all of their sort of respective sub-founding chapters and stuff like that, fighting toe-to-toe against the Nids in this very gnarly fight. I think at one point, like, Dante solos a Swarm Lord and, like, you know, and bless him, bless that old man. He's probably like, this is it now. This is it. I'm going to die. I'm going to die on Baal against a foe that is beyond my comprehension and stuff, and that fucker still lives. Do you know what I mean? It's just like,
Dante's a bad lad. He really is.
He is a bad lad. He is a bad lad. But yeah, I mean, it kind of also shows like how incredibly formidable the Tyranids are. Because, you know, the Blood Angels are a sacred cow. Mm-hmm. They're one of the most beloved legions ever. Yeah. Arguably one of the strongest, or at least, you know, especially for the loyalists and stuff, right? And for them to be in a position of threat where they could have been annihilated, like off the face of the universe, is sobering to say the least, right? Like, that's kind of crazy.
It just kind of brings it home how terrifying the Tyranids are, like how when they really when they really get this the bollocks behind the swarm, like when they really give it the push, like you can't stand against it. So that's what we said previously. It's like the tide, you know. You just what can you do? What can you do? Like there's so many of them.
Is you're literally fighting a primordial force,
and they keep adapting.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Like, you know, you throw something
against them,
it's like a
xenomorph times 1,000, isn't it? It's like a xenomorph times 1,000. Like, how are you going to fight the tide? Like the quite literal tide. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? It's just like, and you know, the Blood Angels are so noble for them to almost be wiped out by this bestial race. It's just grim. It's just so unbelievably grim. Yeah. But you had some great moments there. You had all of your famous like Blood Angels in you know, representation. You had Lamartes, you had Astaroth, you had Sabriel. Is it Sabriel Geth?
Gabriel Seth.
Gabriel.
Sabriel Geth.
Sabriel Geth.
He was there with Commander Kante, wasn't he?
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. That shows my brain.
Gabriel Seth, he's the Flesh Terrors, isn't he?
He's
a good lad.
He's a bit of a dickhead, but like whatever, like he's fine.
Yeah.
You know, for them to all be in alliance to take out the Tyranid is just so unbelievably epic. and obviously caused almost all of the firstborn Blood Angels to be eradicated from existence.
Yeah.
Which was just in time for Guilliman to show up with reinforcements and Primarisification of the Legion and stuff like that, right? So there you go. So Devastation of Baal. What a hit.
What a big one. What's your next one?
So I can't talk about the Imperium getting ad without saying about the Isfans.
Yeah.
So the various Isfans. So Isfan 3 and Isfan 5. So technically they have two very different conflicts. But
they are.
Both represent Horus's absolute genius in terms of how he handled both of those. I mean, to be fair, Isfan 3 was a bit of a fuck-uppery because weirdly that gave him more trouble than Isfan 5. So Isfan 3 was obviously a reference to him cleansing his own legions, his own loyalist elements of his legions, and all of the loyalist elements of his other traitor legions, such as the World Eaters, the Death Guard, and of course the Emperor's Children, right, which were the first wave of traitors, right? And to have all of those people assembled on the planet to then virus bomb them, seemed like a surefire plan to eradicate those
it's a bold stroke. I think it's great.
Easy. He's a good. He's Ebenezer good. Get that done, and he's sorted, right? So never. But actually, that caused him more hassle than he thought, because the loyalists on Isfan 3 dug in really fucking deep and was like, fuck you!
Yep.
And they were still alive for months on end. And Horus was like, fucking hell, I don't have time fanning around with you
just
fucks.
Fuck off.
Just go away. And even at one point, Angron came down, and then Angron's on the service, and bloody
it's
Horus
when you catch your pocket on a door handle, he's like, oh.
Exactly, and Horus is like, God, now fucking Angron's down there, and this is taking too long. I can't spend time doing this, right? And I don't know, gave him way too much thorn in his side. Eventually, obviously, all of the survivors were eradicated. But my God, what a last stand! But terrible loss to the Imperium, including old Sol Tarvitz, the only cool Emperor's Children. Fight me. And then, of course...
No, he's not the only cool Emperor's Children.
Shut up.
The Dreadnought.
Oh, Rylor survived.
Yeah.
Rylor did survive,
He did survive, and he is also another cool Emperor's Children.
Yeah, he is cool.
And you actually said that.
I love Rylor.
Yeah. Anyway, carry on, sorry.
And then Isfan 5, of course, which was the Drop Site Massacre.
Yep.
Which basically involved Horus doing a mightiful fuck you and using... the remainder of his traitorous brothers to murder 3 legions that then became the Shattered Legions, which were, of course, the Salamanders, the Raven Guard, and the Iron Hands. That all got decimated as a result of their brothers turning on them at the last minute. I mean, the Emperor was just all big-brained about it, I'm going to send... 5 legions to crush 3. This should not be a problem. Not obviously knowing that, obviously the Iron Warriors, Alpha Legion, who else would it have been? I forget. But the other traitor legions, obviously turning on their brothers, and Night Lords, obviously, and just don't send the Night Lords to do that job. That's a terrible idea. Why would you do that? That's such a bad idea.
They're gonna have a great time.
The schizophrenic psycho that's probably going to turn on me anyway. Send him to do the job. He'll do that.
That sounds sensible.
Fucking idiot.
The Emperor makes great decisions.
Shut up. He's misunderstood. But praise the Emperor. Praise him. Look, literally he's there on his John Blanche throne on my arm.
Oh, I see. Yeah, behind you. Yeah.
Oh, the Emperor. So it's Vans. Because then at that point, Horus had his leg on the heresy then.
Yeah.
The Imperium was completely on the back foot.
Yeah.
That was it. Then he was straight then to terror, pretty much.
Pretty much.
50 bucks later.
Yeah, exactly. They just take a casual $50. So I think my next choice is the... so I'm just going to run... It's the World Engine of Borsis,
See, I have no idea about this.
So this is an interesting one. It's a massive tomb world, a Necron tomb world, right? It's and it's mobile, by the way. It's not just like it's like a proper Death Star. It's about as close to a Death Star as you can get in 40k, right? So it was discovered in the Vidar sector, right? And then basically they woke up, the Necrons did, and this thing was a planet-sized weapon that was armed with an array of deadly Gauss projectors. It basically could just blow up planets, right? You could literally just scour life off the surface of a planet in no time at all. So that's the idea behind it. Really, really big threat to the Imperium, obviously, because you can't be having... I love it, you've just gone into like...
sorry.
No, you're good. So yeah, it's like... It's a massive threat to the Imperium. You can't have that shit rocking around, just blowing planets up and just killing people. You know, with bloody sleepy Necrons.
We can't be having that.
No, we can't be having that. So basically, what happened was they attacked it, but they couldn't penetrate the void shields on this thing because it was just so powerful. Right? Obviously, it's just a massive piece of technology. So the Astral Knights Space Marine chapter had to ram their fucking flagship in a suicidal charge. And then after that, they managed to shut down the shields and then drop pod everybody onto the surface and blow the thing up with like a load of melter charges and shit. And they managed to blow it up. And then eventually, I think that it sort of like, once all of that dropped, I think the Catan that were imprisoned in there as well, that they were actually probably just using as batteries and shit, got out and started wreaking havoc, like the shards and all that sort of stuff.
Oh,
but
Jesus.
Yeah, they had to throw so much shit at this thing to kill it that it was such a massive loss that they basically, you know, it was worth it in the end, clearly, but like it was... At
what cost?
Yeah, exactly. They lost a lot to throw at it. So I just thought it was a really interesting one. It's a cool little bit of Necron lore. It's just, I love all of the cool shit that Necrons have, like, you know, bloody Death Stars and obviously the Celestial Orrery that we mentioned a few times.
It's so like yesteryear scary, isn't it?
Yeah, it's just like it's just nuts, like physical, you know, star matter technology that you just look at it and you're like, how the fuck did they make all this shit? Like, it's crazy. But yeah, like that's quite cool what I thought, like, as in terms of the more the losses of the people they had to throw at it to kill the damn thing.
Yeah.
So that was one of my ones.
Very cool. Very cool indeed. We might do a part 2 of this, actually.
Nah, fuck it. Let's do the last one.
To do the last one?
Yeah, we got time.
Ones. Okay, cool.
Bonus 10 minutes.
War of the Beast. So where Terra nearly fell.
Yeah, it fucking did.
And it wasn't due to chaos at all.
No.
It was from the fucking orcs.
The orcs were mental. They were just like rallied, weren't they?
I think what happened was, obviously, the Emperor in person gave the orcs an absolute kicking at the tail end of the Great Crusade, right? And that's when he knew that his job was done, because the biggest threat to the Imperium was the orcs that he perceived, right? And he knew they had to, like, basically stop the orcs getting out of control during the Great Crusade. Otherwise, things were going to get very, very tough for the Imperium, right? So he spanked the orcs with Horus and gave them a proper spanking. And then we didn't really hear much about the orcs for a long time. No. Obviously, the Horus Heresy happened. The Emperor was put on the Golden Throne. And apart from like a few incursions here and there, kind of the orcs were quite quiet. Until an event known as the War of the Beast happened, which was fairly early-ish in like 40k history as we know it, right? Probably in one of the mid-30 sort of centuries. But essentially, the orcs led a war to assault Terra, led by an OG Krork.
Yeah,
which was a Primarch.
He was evolving into a Krork, wasn't he? Because, and it's a bit like Gaz. Like the stronger they get, the more weight they get behind them, the bigger they get. You know,
and of course the Krorks being the OG world-ending orcs that were created by the Great Ones to fight the Necrons. I think at one point in time, right?
Actually, intelligent orcs. So basically, like
intelligent, like uber tier. Intelligent Space Marine orcs,
but with super mega armor on as well.
Yeah.
So,
and basically that Krork was imbuing all of the orcs under its command structure to like its power, right? And like basically the Imperium shat itself because it was like, oh my god, and it was going through its own like political strife where the ecclesiarchy was taking power in the Imperium, and it was kind of distracted by its own pomposity and stupidity. And the Orcs basically rocked up and nearly wiped out humanity.
Yeah.
Where the poor Imperial fists, I think, took such a kick in where their gene seed is not actually their own gene seed, or like they're a bit of a hybrid chapter even to this day where
they lost
took
so many people.
So many losses that because obviously they're stationed at Terra, right? The Imperial Fist is stationed at Terra. And it, of course, took the sacrifice of Vulcan to take down the Krork itself, right? The Krork Lord, where Vulcan smashed the Krork Lord, and we haven't heard of Vulcan since.
No.
So, obviously, Vulcan is a perpetual. In my opinion, he's still alive out there somewhere.
Yeah.
But I reckon he's got his memory blanked, and he's like being a massive fucking farmer in some field, just toiling in a field, right? Ready to be discovered by the Imperium again. But, like... Yeah, savage casualties, almost wiped out Terror as we know it.
Also responsible for one of the coolest things in 40k, which I think is amazing, called attack moons. I don't know if you heard about the attack moons.
No! What are the attack moons?
Mate, that was their fucking flagships. That was what all the warlords and obviously the beast were riding on. They basically had like actual fucking moon-sized flagships.
Wow.
They were so big. It was like a Death Star again. And like they basically just came in and they would like shoot the fuck out of things or like crash the moons into planets. And it was just, it's nuts. Like really, really powerful weaponry, really big flagships, like massive, out of beyond scale. That was a really cool one. Like the Orc attack moons is something I love.
Attack moons.
Attack moons. Yeah, multiple of them as well. So
there's even a book series on the War of the Beast, which is really long. It's like 10 books long or something.
Yeah, I'd like to read it at some point, actually.
Yeah, I've heard it has ups and downs, like the Horus Heresy and stuff like that. But it's very Salamanders and Imperial Fisty.
Sounds cool.
Of course, with some Golden Boys, of course, thrown in there for good measure. But
that was a close call, the War of the Beast. You know, that's the thing with Orcs. It's like one of those sort of things where I think... if they're just scattered about here and there, they're not too much of a problem. Like the Space Marines come in and clear them up, whatever. But the problem is that they keep coming back, and then they sort of war within themselves, and then they get bigger and bigger bosses, and then they start to expand and take over more and more clans, and eventually you just get this big war together. And then at that point, you're in real danger trouble because you need to kind of quell that before it gets too out of hand. And this was basically the most out of hand that it's got in recent history. It's terrifying. Yeah. War of the Beast is awesome. Yeah. Good choice. My last one is the ending of the Horus Heresy. How can we not mention that, right? What happened there was devastating.
Dark, man. Like, it kind of snubbed out humanity's bright future all in one thing. Like, when you
lost
look at
Sanguinius.
Terrifying.
Terrible.
See, my one that got lost was old Malky died, which really upset me.
Yeah,
like really upset me. In the end of the Death Volume 3, where he like takes the Golden Throne, not to like, I'm not going to go too deep into it, but like, it's so sad.
Yeah,
it's so sad. That last conversation, that like the acknowledgement of what happens there between Malkator and the Emperor is so sweet, and like, bless him, just sat on the Golden Throne, like just being torn apart by like psychic energy, just holding it.
He's a perpetual though, right? So he'll come back anyway.
No, he's not.
Is he not Malky?
I don't think he's a perpetual as we know it, but like,
I thought he was.
Well, maybe he is, but either way, there's no chance of him coming back because he was
burned his soul
burnt off. He was like burnt, like his soul and his body was like used as a battery for the Golden Throne.
Hopefully one of his half Eldar clones survived.
Well, I think one of his kids have survived somewhere down the line. I think some of But
obviously, Horus was just obliterated. That put a stop to things. Big E was mortally wounded and entombed in the Golden Throne. You know, there's so much stuff that's all like massive ructions around that point. Which have just. So I don't feel like you can do this list without mentioning it, really, to be honest.
No, absolutely not. I think, obviously, from that point forward, the golden age of humanity was totally undone. And
so much technology lost.
Oh, yeah, dude, that was it. That was it. Like, how the hell is humanity going to survive? And as we know it, quite poorly, unfortunately. Do you know what I mean? Like it wasn't the best for old humanity.
Life's got dark.
Yeah, very much so. Very, very much so. But, like, fascinating. Genuinely fascinating. Poor Umies. Poor Umies. But what about you guys? What was the biggest losses that ever affected humanity? Like, what do we reckon? I think we pretty much named them all now. Like, that was it.
I mean, Gilliman stood over his table with all the planets going winking into red. So there's got to be more to come, right? It's going to be interesting.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the future of the lore. Really excited about it.
Oh, it's going to be great.
Yeah.
And we have a very special guest next week.
Yes, we do.
Peachy
Lord
Keen.
Peachy himself will be coming on, hopefully. So watch this space. It'll be an awesome episode. So we're really excited.
But like I said, give us some Q&A questions, please, for our first Q&A episode on the horizon.
Yeah, drop those below or in Discord.
And thank you very much for our Patreons. Thank you very much for our subscribers. Thank you very much for people on Discord.
Yeah.
Thank you very much for everyone just enjoying this bloody show.
It's lovely to be here. Thank you to my glorious co-host Russ as well.
And thank you, Ed. You absolute legend.
We love doing it.
We will catch you next time on In the Tank.
See you guys.
Laters!